Yeah.
All right, so I've done hydrogen energy, and that's involving hydrogen fuel cells. And this is a little different than most of the energy forms discussed today because this is more focusing on a method of storing energy. The method involves storing hydrogen as a compressed gas. One of the most abundant thing on Earth is hydrogen. And when you have hydrogen and just the oxygen in the air mixed together, the results are electricity and then, of course, water. So a hydrogen fuel cell only emits water as its only, water vapor as its only emission. It doesn't put out any bad chemicals, doesn't put out any greenhouse gases. And it works because the hydrogen and the oxygen, when they come together, the electron transfer can be controlled with cathodes and anodes and in the fuel cell that can control how the electrons pass between them to form the covalent bonds in water. And if you can trap the way that the electrons travel, that can produce energy directly from the hydrogen. And getting the hydrogen then becomes the difficult part because while hydrogen is one of the most abundant elements, it's very, very hard to find hydrogen, just pure hydrogen. It's usually bonded with something else. But for this to work, generally they need pure hydrogen in its diatomic form. And so this is done with a few ways. Sometimes it's from natural gases can be used for hydrogen energy because most natural gases are very high in hydrogen. The other more eco-friendly but sometimes more difficult way is electrolysis. This is running electrodes through the water, and it can separate hydrogen and oxygen. And obviously this does take more energy than you'll get out from the fuel cell, which is why this is more of a method of storing energy. But a lot of things today will have fuel cells instead of batteries because the fuel cell has parts that will last longer than some batteries and is full of hydrogen and oxygen and not some of the metals that are becoming more scarce or difficult to mine or are less eco-friendly to mine. And a lot of times the electrolysis can be powered by something like solar or wind energy that's more eco-friendly. And so it's a more eco-friendly way to store than some batteries, which brings us to the other benefits. So as I mentioned, the batteries, a lot of what people don't recognize in some eco-friendly things is that batteries are not that great for the environment. And so the advantage of hydrogen fuel cells is you don't need a battery because it converts a fuel source directly into energy, and that cuts out the need for a middleman battery. Additionally, it's very safe to the hydrogen is usually stored as a pressurized gas, which does have some dangers, but modern technology has pretty good containers for pressurized gas, and it's actually a lot less likely to have those fail than to have your battery fail on you. And when a battery fails, there's lots of issues with batteries breaking, failing, or just having battery acid everywhere, because that sucks. Another thing that's very good about hydrogen energy is that it can be implemented into smaller things as well. We already have hydrogen-powered cars. The Honda has a car powered by hydrogen, so unlike some renewable energy sources, this can be applied as big as a house or a city could have underground pipes that transport hydrogen in the future, and then there could be smaller generators in houses, there could be generators in fuel cells, not generators, in cars, and even just like smaller handheld devices could have small hydrogen fuel cells. And this technology is being very widely developed. NASA is one of the biggest proponents. They've already worked with hydrogen fuel cells in lots of their rockets because they have no emissions. The only emission is water vapor, which can then be drank by the crew members. So that's hydrogen energy.
Whew. Okay, ready for my questions?
Yes.
Okay, how do you spell benefits?
B-E-N-I-T-S is not
no,
correct.
you should look that up.
I don't know, man.
So I had several questions, and you actually eventually hit them all. It was really good, but I'm going to point them out anyway just to make people understand.
Right.
So, because originally you had said that hydrogen is the most abundant element, it's everywhere, so we can just use it all the time. And then you came back and said it is the most abundant element, but it's the most abundant because it's part of water, and water is incredibly abundant, right? But it's H2O, right? So it's bound with something. What we're talking about here is hydrogen, which is one of the 7 diatomic elements on the periodic table, right? H2. And that is not abundant because it's extremely reactive, right?
Yeah.
Which would lead you to another question of like, large amounts of hydrogen, in our history is not a good thing, right? Incredibly explosive, right? The Hindenburg, remember?
Yeah.
Remember we thought we need a really light gas to make a balloon float. Let's use hydrogen, it's the lightest one there is. Also the most explosive one there is, right? So it destroys it. So now we use helium, which is still light, 4 times heavier than hydrogen, but it's still light, but it's completely inert, right? It's a noble gas, so it doesn't react with anything. So that's really good to use that for that. But hydrogen in large quantities or in pipes underground could cause some ISIS problems, maybe. Okay? There's some problems there with that, and that's a containment of hydrogen. This can be a somewhat dangerous thing. It's not rocket science, right? Yes, it is rocket science.
Gosh.
Right? What is rocket fuel? People think, well, rocket fuel is so incredibly difficult. Rocket fuel is hydrogen gas. We've been using it clear back from the Apollo missions, and we just take a big huge tank of hydrogen. Remember the space shuttle? Yeah. Remember there was a big orange tank, right? That big orange thing? Okay? 2/3 of it was hydrogen, and the third of it was oxygen, H2O, right? And a byproduct is water, and we can drink it. It's amazing, right? Water also, by the way, is the #1 greenhouse gas, but we don't ever talk about that. So,
fun story about like the big shuttle, the big orange fuel tank. My uncle was one of the people who because he works for Lockheed Martin, and they got subcontracted to so he was in charge of actually making the machines that put that thing together and painted the foam on.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's a good job because it burned up every time they did it and had to build a new one.
Exactly.
So, but now they're not doing it anymore. So,
Yeah.
Okay, good job. That was a really good explanation. We are going to be